everyone, it's Ashley, and today I'm bringing you my review of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This was the April You Choose pick. I will leave all the details for You Choose down below. Basically, every month I let you guys pick a book that I read the following month, and I absolutely have to read that book, and I have to film a book review of it. So this is a very overdue book review video. I suck at being on schedule for filming book review videos because I put them off way too long every time, but I'm doing it just late, so I feel like it's progress, you know? Progress is being made. Maybe, who knows? Hopefully May's You Choose review will actually be posted in May, but today is the 25th of May, so who knows if that will also be on time. But without further ado, here is my review of Station 11. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It was a brilliant read. Highly recommend. I don't really know how to describe it properly because I don't actually think the synopsis on the inside cover of the book is exactly the right way to describe it. But basically this is a post-apocalyptic 6 Degrees of Separation novel is how I personally would describe it. First, we're going to talk about plot. So it takes place in a world, it starts in Toronto, Canada, where a plague hits the world and 99.9% of the world dies. And essentially all electronics are gone, batteries, electricity, all of that shot. So it follows all these characters that connect to one another in some way. Not always directly, but always with 6 degrees of separation. So for those of you who don't know, 6 degrees of separation is this theory that everybody is connected to everybody by 6 degrees of separation. So this book follows a whole bunch of main characters that all kind of connect that way, and I personally love that kind of storytelling. I think it is so cool and unique, and it's just a really great take on character development. Highly recommend. So essentially, it's a character-driven post-apocalyptic novel. That's the best way to describe it. And it follows, for a lot of the book, but not the whole part of the book, a traveling Shakespeare symphony. So these people who perform Shakespeare plays and also perform music to go along with the Shakespeare plays, they kind of travel around the world and perform those plays for these little tiny towns that have come together after the flu that killed everyone. So these tiny towns of 10 to 50 people who live in gas stations and on the road. They perform for them. Next, we're going to talk about characters. For this particular book, there were certain characters where I absolutely loved their story. I would look ahead to find when the next chapter was where I would see that character again. And then there were other characters where I was just I just wasn't really interested in their story. It didn't make me dislike the book by any means. I still gave it 5 stars, but I definitely wasn't as invested. So for me, I found the character development was really well done with all the characters, but definitely the likability of all the characters was not on point with all of them. And by that, I don't mean they're the nicest or the greatest or blah, blah, blah. I like characters that are villains. You can make a likable villain. That is a thing almost any author could do, but there were definitely characters in this where I just was not as invested in their story at all. But it did not deter me from liking the overall book, which is ultimately the goal. And last but not least, we're going to talk about writing. So for me, this is normally the most important part of a book in almost every book. Although I can overlook bad writing if the plot and the characters are super great. But in this book, the writing was by far the best part of the book. And for me, that generally leads to a 5-star rating. I loved the writing. It really lended itself well to the type of story that she was trying to tell, but it was also just so readable. It wasn't patronizing, but it also wasn't pretentious. And I found that for especially a Canadian literary fiction book, it was so good. I normally don't read Canadian literary fiction because it's normally, in my personal opinion, pretty pretentious, and I don't tend to like that. But this book, it honestly was just so readable. I don't even know what else to say, but it had this this feeling throughout the whole thing where like I would read like 50 pages and I wouldn't even realize that an hour and a half had gone by. I'd be like, oh, I've been reading for like 10 minutes, but it'd been forever because I was so immersed in the writing and the story. And it doesn't matter how great your plot is or how great your characters are if your writing is not fluid and like just like, I like to use the word like dreamy, then it doesn't matter how good everything else is. I normally will stop reading after like a half an hour because I will be bored. So this book just, so I look back and I feel like there wasn't that much happening plot-wise, and like I didn't like half the characters, and yet I still was like completely immersed in the book, and it was honestly the author's writing that did that for me personally. Okay, so all in all, I loved this book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was super readable, very enjoyable. It was very different from anything else I've ever read. Like, I don't know that I've ever read anything quite like this book, which is also really interesting. And I feel like this is one of those books where like I'm not sure I will ever get around to reading it a second time, but I feel like it'll probably be even better the second time around. This technically won the like sci-fi you choose month, but even if you're not a sci-fi reader, which I normally am not, this definitely has more of a like character-driven literary feel with like a little bit of a sci-fi twist. Okay, so that is my review of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. If you have any Canadian lit recommendations or any like 6 Degrees of Separation or like books where all the characters kind of connect in some way, comment down below with those because I really want to read more can-lit books and more like books with characters that connect like this because I really liked this concept. And other than that, I will see you guys soon with another video. Happy reading. Bye!